The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power showrunners Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne are back to their old tricks. They are claiming that they are staying true to Tolkien's work while admitting that that's not what they're doing at all. Joining me today to discuss this is Jonathan Watson from theonering.com, our resident Tolkien expert here at the Trent Report. Glad to have you here. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. We'd also like to ask if you hit that like button so we beat the YouTube algorithm and more people can see this. So before we get to this, how are you doing, Jonathan?
Good. I'm hanging in there. This is it's been a Monday though with this kind of news.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Always love to get your opinions and thoughts on the Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. And we've got a doozy here today. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And as I said, Patrick McKay, J.D. Payne are doubling down on their lie, which is what they constantly do about this, that they are adhering to Professor J.R.R. Tolkien's work. They made these comments during a set visit that Collider did to Season 2 for the Rings of Power. And this is what they had to say. Let me jump down here. They said this. It empowers you to see what people respond to, and it's always obvious people respond to Tolkien. That's why Tolkien is what next to the Bible and the Quran reaches readers around the world with a number of copies sold. So let's double down on Tolkien and go back to those things that draw people in. We had a plan, and we're sticking with it. We have to do what we believe in, says Patrick McKay. So not only did they double down on this lie, they're respecting Tolkien's work, but they also had said that they were sticking to their 5-year plan. McKay said this: "We took this insane, ambitious project on because we had a story we wanted to tell and we felt needed to be told. We were willing to give our lives for a long time to tell it. The plan hasn't changed." He then contradicted this, like almost, I guess, immediately after. He says, Season 2 was largely written before Season 1 came out, but Season 2 has been produced after Season 1 came out. Part of the learning process for us on this is really seeing what people seem to respond to in the show. And then Payne said this: "We also take in everything. We read everything. We read the reviews. We read what you all have written. We read what your colleagues have written, and we read what the fans are saying." So it sounds like they aren't sticking to their 5-year plan because they're obviously taking the feedback and changing the story based on the feedback that they received. But before we get to discussion about that, let's talk about the fact that they are saying they're doubling down on Tolkien and going back to those things that draw people in. We've heard this before, right? This is the most famous.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do this real quick. This is the most famous, where they say, like, we go back to the book, This is from San Diego Comic-Con 2022. Let's listen to this.
And 2, when Tolkien was silent, we tried to invent as Tolkienian a way as possible. Go back to the book, go back to the book, go back to the book.
Yeah. Right there. I mean, you literally can't make this stuff up. I mean, these people are such hypocrites. If Tolkien was silent, we're just going to make it up. And then it's like, go back to the book, go back to the book, go back to the book.
Well, I mean, their entire thing is about, like, we need to honor Tolkien, but it's the story that we wanted to tell. And we're the only ones that could tell this story, and we needed to put out our 5-year plan. So the whole time they talk about how much they adhere to the books, which is the names are there, right? The places are there, but they don't create the story that Tolkien actually wrote. I mean, again, let's go back to the very end of Season 1, where they create the Elvish Rings of Power. Sorry, my brain goes into these horrible ways that they adapted. Okay, listen, they created the Rings of Power.
There's so many things that were wrong with the show that are not Tolkien that it's hard to know where to start.
The whole point that the elves create the Rings of Power is because, like, it's because the other rings were already created, right? That it leads to that. But here we have them created first, and so they screwed up just the chronology of the simplest thing in the name of the stupid show, The Rings of Power. They made it wrong. They couldn't even get that right. The most simple aspect of this, and we're not even talking about the 2,000 years. Well, now it's like more the way that they're bringing in other characters. It's like 3,000 years of timelines they're condensing down to their 5 seasons. It is
characters
not
that
ever.
aren't even around in the Second Age that are in.
Yeah, they're bringing in.
Hobbits.
I mean, Tom Bombadil would be around, but to have him in there again, he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in the Lord of the Rings. I don't have a problem saying that because even Tolkien acknowledged like he wasn't really a part of the story. He just liked Tom Bombadil and wanted to throw him in there. But they're injecting him into a story in the Second Age that I think Tolkien would say like, yeah, no, I don't. He doesn't really fit in the Second Age in the way that I wrote the Second Age. Tom Bombadil is kind of like a remnant of the Hobbit. So in our podcast, Exploring Tolkien, we're going over in great detail the Hobbit and how it was totally different from the Lord of the Rings. And when Tolkien wrote Tom Bombadil early in his writing, right, he made him a character that was more like from the Hobbit, a fairy story, not a Third Age story in the histories of Middle Earth. And so we see even how in the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien goes from these tales of great just fairy story into the destruction of the Third Age and the destruction of Sauron. But these guys, they have to bring in characters far into the future. The Barrow-wights are coming now. And so for them to make this claim that they're ever going back to the book, that they're ever being very as Tolkienian in a way, just using the name doesn't mean it's from Tolkien. There's a quote from Tommy Boy I'd say, but I'm not going to say it.
And, well, we know that there's so many things that they changed. Obviously, you talked about how they messed up the chronology for the actual creation of the Rings of Power. Sauron isn't even Anatar at that point, where he's literally supposed to be Anatar, like duping the elves. We aren't going to see that until, I guess, this season now. So I don't even know how they're going to fix that in because they're completely changing that. We also know that they included the hobbits in the Second Age story, and we know Tolkien says they didn't even exist. These people think that Harfoots are some kind of progenitor race of hobbits, even though Tolkien explains on page 3 of the Fellowship of the Ring that Harfoots are hobbits, and there's 3 types of different hobbits, and Harfoots are one of them. So like that's wrong. I know this is going to make you go off right here. The whole mithril stuff that they completely made up. Like the elves need to like get the dwarves to mine the mithril so that they can stay immortal.
The whole like animated scene of a good elf and a bad Balrog fighting over mithril in the mountain, and there's lightning and it creates mithril because the two of them somehow strike. And mithril actually, like Tolkien hints, it was actually found on Numenor too. So it's not like they're never going back to the book. The whole that we need mithril in order to maintain the world. And it's so modern age to say like, ooh, the yin and the yang of the good and the bad is then the lightning is going to create this alchemy of mithril magic that runs down into the veins of the mountain, and now they have to mine it. And it's amateurish. It's sort of taking all these things. And if I were going to do my own Dungeons and Dragons role play, I would take all these things, and this is what I would do. And so this is where we are now in these guys, right? These guys are fan fiction writers. They have no business taking what Tolkien wrote and actually creating something long-lived, right? Because they're not actually doing Tolkien. They're actually changing the story, changing the characters. They might have the same name. They're not the same characters. Anatar, Halbrand, Sauron, not the Sauron from the Second Age that we know about that started Barad-dûr in the year 1000. And that lasted essentially like that mountain will have essentially lasted what, like 5,000 years at that point, right? So that's how long that thing lasts. But it's built in a short amount of time, and Mordor is created instantly, and nothing in here is actually
the volcano eruption rather than destruction of
the steamy volcano, the Doritos Cheetos dust volcano that nobody believed and everybody laughed at.
And it's unlocked by putting a sword into like a.
That was Tolkien, right? That was something that he said. He said about swords and big dams with water, and then my least favorite part really of all that is that trench they had to dig in the first series, right? They're digging the trench in order to take the water from the dam into the mountain. That's why the orcs captured the elves in order to help them dig their trench. They aimed for a large tree with their trench. They could have gone to the left or maybe to the right, but no, they went to this large tree that they had to figure out how to go. They had to cut out, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this, it's so easy. It's so easy. And the one thing that bothers me, right, is what like, people ask me, like, why are you so annoyed with the Rings of Power and other things like this? And I'm like, look, the name of Tolkien means excellence, right? The things he did, the time that he spent, the care that he put into it. there is no more in my mind. There is no more excellent world creation than what Tolkien did over his entire lifetime, from the early 1910s up through the month that he died. There is nothing else in the world like it. The details matter. And then these guys come in and they create a fan fiction where the details don't matter anymore. They can keep saying that we're going back to the book. They can say, don't believe your lying eyes. But they are not anything more, in my not humble opinion, than fan fiction hacks that are coming in and trying to tell their own story because they think they can tell it better. Like they said, they want to tell the story that would be on the same bookshelf as Tolkien's. They have no business being there.
Yeah, that's I brought that up here in this article as well. They made this when it was basically their first promotional piece in Vanity Fair back in February 2022. You had Patrick McKay basically say that the driving question behind the show was, can we come up with the novel Tolkien never wrote and do it as the mega event series that could only happen now? So they were basically saying in this original promotional piece that they were not going to be doing what Tolkien wrote. They were trying to like create the novel he never wrote, even though he wrote the Silmarillion. We have all of the other things that that were published posthumously by his son Christopher Tolkien, etc., like History of Middle Earth and all that stuff as well.
And that's the crazy thing, is they had the story. They have it there, right? It's in the appendices to the Return of the King. It's in the Silmarillion. They had the story that Tolkien wrote, but they decided that they would change it because they knew better. And it's an exercise in futility, because this will not be remembered as anything great, right? Peter Jackson's films, right? He made the point. I have my issues with his films, but he made the point we wanted to honor Tolkien and honor his legacy, and that meant, in his mind, hewing as closely as possible to the books. And though I have problems with
cases, he had to be shamed. He had to be shamed to make.
Yeah, that's true. Thankfully, Aragorn never actually fought Sauron at the end either.
The Arwen scene as well at Helm's Deep.
Arwen at Helm's Deep, yeah. But at least, you know, he tried it, and then he's realized, no, that's not going to work, right? He made the right decision in the end. These guys, we've seen season 1 and what happens to it. They did not make the right decision in the end. They are not going back to the book. They are recreating characters in the image that they see them, rather than in what Tolkien actually wrote. So anything that they say at this point, where they're talking about how, you know, we have a whole big 5-year plan and we're listening to the fans, I don't believe them. They're not listening to the fans, right? They have their agenda. They know what they want to write, and it's not what Tolkien wrote.
Why do you think that they continue to say that they are honoring Tolkien's legacy when they clearly aren't?
Because I don't think they can say anything else. They have no choice but to say that. If they said, you know, we think that we have a better story to tell than what Tolkien wrote, like, that's one, admitting defeat, and two, really turning all the fans against you at that point. So I think that's all they can say at this point. If they actually and you know, if Jeff Bezos and the people ahead of him, they don't really know the story of the Second Age. They don't really know what's going on. So as long as they keep saying it, so that the higher ups won't, you know, be coming after them saying like, whoa, wait, you mean that that Halbrand's not a real character in there, and that Anatar, he doesn't come to the elves. Wait, huh? You know, they have to actually keep lying. Like, and they know, right? This is not. They know their Tolkien stuff. Like they know that they're changing it. They just think they're better at it. They really do.
Right. They said this as well in the Vanity Fair article. Again, this was 2 years ago. You had J.D. Payne said, we talked with the Tolkien estate. If you are true to the exact letter of the law, you're going to be telling a story in which your human characters are dying off every season because you're jumping 200 years in time, and then you're not meeting really big, important canon characters until season 4. Look, there might be some fans who want us to do a documentary of Middle Earth, but we're going to tell one story that unites all these things. So, as you said, this is exactly what their plan was from the beginning. They told us this in the very first promotional piece, but then they continue, because I think I think you're right. No one wants this. This is absolutely garbage. No one wanted to see this. So then they try and basically bait and switch people by claiming that it's actually honoring Tolkien. And then people saw what it was. What was it? 63%, I think, of people tuned into maybe the first episode, the day that it premiered. And then, people turned into the episode, and then 63% of those people that tuned in did not finish the show.
Just gone. Yeah. They have nobody, and that's a death knell for a show. Is like, it's kind of like, That's fine. I don't really care about it. We'll just move on. Even people that a lot of family members that I know watched it were like, yeah, I never actually finished it. It just lost my interest. It was boring and slow. And that's the other thing is, right. It's not just not Tolkien. I think it's actually really poorly done too. The writing is amateurish. It's fan fiction. The settings are, time and distance don't mean anything. So they've got all these issues that they're working with that they don't like I said earlier, the details matter to Tolkien. He spent months maybe slaving over the map to make sure that it worked right with how far the fellowship would have to travel and the proper distances to measure between places, and he slaved over that. Like there's that famous quote that I love to bring up every once is he wrote his son that said this map is hell because he had to figure out how to make it work, and he spent time to these guys just don't care about distances. Galadriel travels essentially like hundreds and hundreds of miles over the span of a day with Halbrand injured at the second or third to the last episode of the Rings of Power, and he survives and she's fine, and there's like you just don't get the sense of scope or the attention to detail that this type of story demands.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, we saw a lot of that in the Rings of Power the first season there, with especially with like the hobbits, the Harfoots, and how they were like doing their journey and all this stuff, and they were trying to like put it back and forth. The whole idea that they had to compress this stuff never made any real sense to me at all either. Because we've seen shows that do a bunch of time jumps and have different time eras. Obviously, The Witcher season 1 kind of does that. I don't think it does it very well. Maybe that's not the best example, but there are shows that can do like, hey, we're going to do this and then we're going to jump ahead. I mean, I think House of the Dragon did it in their first season where they actually literally like recasted the actors as they aged up, and they just did a huge
that's right
jump, and the audience had no problem with that. So the idea that
and I think
people can't get that is just utterly
and I think what's unique about what Tolkien wrote too is like you would have Elrond and Gil-galad and Celebrimbor and Galadriel and Celeborn, these characters that do matter and would be in every season. You could have that as a through line, and then you could have the period in which Barad-dûr is first built, and then you could have where the Rings of Power are first conceived, and then you could have moved on where the men are corrupted, right? And you would have these through lines, and you would get to know these characters that would obviously be also, the descendants of the characters from the previous season. So you would have a through line, and the locations would be the same. I think that would make a much more interesting show where you actually find how things have changed over time. I mean, you get this also in regular TV shows where they'll jump forward in a new season like another year because they just feel like things have happened and now we can tell another story after all this stuff went on. And you can focus these episodes, these seasons, on these cataclysmic events in the second age of Middle Earth, whether it's when Barad-dûr is built or when the Rings of Power first conceived, or when when all the corruption happens, and then when the War of the Ring happens. Like you could have these major seasonal arcs, but it feels like they just didn't have, like, either somebody up top said that's a bad idea, or they just couldn't figure out how to make that work because they feel like everybody has to be in the same storyline throughout all 5 seasons. It just seems odd to me because to me it would feel like a really great show. So to have the scope of it would be huge then, right? If they're worried about things feeling small, which they really did in season 1, the scope of that would be amazing. Like it's a 5-season show over 1,500 years or 2,000 years. That would be interesting.
I think the fact that they're compressing the timeline too also takes away from the fall of Numenor and showing that kind of gradual descent that obviously kind of peaks with Ar-Pharazôn and his pride kind of takes over, and we don't really get to see that kind of gradual happening. And you could have done that with obviously with those elves and all the stuff and how they're interacting and engaging.
Well, they made it far worse because we found out that the elves are coming to take their jobs. So we know that the real downfall of Numenor comes because of immigration. That's really what they're telling us.
Yeah, I just kind of I know you're a big Star Wars fan too, and I just kind of go back to the complaints from the prequels. It's Revenge of the Sith. It's like, wow, Anakin turned so fast. You could have they should have shown more of him kind of being seduced by the dark side into that fall. And like, this was literally a show that's built for it, or that should have been built for it over 5 seasons, where you would get to see an actual entire, not just a person, but an entire civilization kind of fall into this societal rot and decay, where they're eventually basically just worshiping the devil and engaging in human sacrifice at the behest of Sauron.
And it's it's interesting to me that he brings up, Tolkien is the one thing closest to the Bible or the Quran. I'm like, well, Bible, okay. Let's not throw the Quran into here.
Why he's doing that
with him. Well, why do you think he's doing that? Just to point out that.
Oh, I think it's just PC woke.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, yes. If he's going to say Bible, he has to say Quran to validate that too. But they don't even lean into, like, in all of Middle Earth, the only place that Tolkien actually writes about there being a worship of God, like in a sort of edifice level, right, where there are places you go to worship God, is in Numenor. They completely got rid of that in season 1. They could have leaned into that, and then, like you said about Sauron coming over and corrupting them, and eventually, creating a large domed structure that has a sacrificial altar in the middle where the fire goes out the top. Like, they could have done this whole thing, and they bring down the Mount Tarma, where they go, where they don't ever go there anymore to worship God. They could have done that, and it would have seemed, again, the scope would have been greater. It would have been more human, because we can identify with that, because a lot of us people do actually believe in the higher power and there is a good and evil in the world around us that we have to fight against. But they even got rid of that. They made it elves are coming for your jobs. That's the big problem. And so Sauron's going to come over and make sure that the elves don't take their jobs or something. It's amateurish. And again, these are what these writers, they learn in college. They don't know what real good, real evil, what real struggle, real power, what real problems are. And so you look at what Tolkien went through World War I with himself and a bunch of his friends dying, his closest friends at the time, seeing destruction, understanding what real pain is, both emotional and physical, and then seeing it for his children when his son had to go into World War II. Christopher Tolkien was in I believe, the North African front. And so he understood what real loss is, what real disaster is. But these guys who write this show cannot fathom what that is. They don't understand what real loss, what real good, what real evil actually looks like, probably because they haven't read it, and also because, none of us, we've really experienced it in the last 70 years. Anyway, yeah, that's my, like, it goes down deeper than just like their hacks, but the school system doesn't put out any quality cultural writers anymore, because they don't understand any of the culture that came before us. So even then, they don't understand Tolkien.
I think we're going to leave it at that. I think that's a good point to leave it off. I don't really have anything else to add to that. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us here on the Trim Report. Always glad to have you here to discuss Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings. Where can people find you here on YouTube and elsewhere?
Yeah, go to the onering.com or and look for the One Ring on YouTube here. You can also look for Exploring Tolkien. That's our podcast. You'll just use those words. You'll find it anywhere on any Google or YouTube or podcast app. We're right now reading through The Hobbit, which is interesting because we're kind of examining his 1937 edition versus his 1966 edition versus an edition that he wrote 3.5 chapters of in 1960 that is only available in one book that is available on Kindle. But man, you can't get an actual hard copy these days. So anyway, check that out. Exploring Tolkien. Just look that up.
And I'll have those links in the description below as well. Again, thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. And remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.